For more on this story, we're joined by David Camroux, who's a senior researcher and adjunct professor at Sciences Po University. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24. If we could start by just having a little reminder of what all is at the heart of this conflict. We know there are territorial disputes, but is there more to it than that?
Well, at the heart of the conflict are historic territorial disputes that go back at least a century. We don't even agree on the size of the border. For the Cambodians, it is 817 kilometers. For the Thais, it's 798 kilometers. And there are at least a quarter of that border that we don't agree upon. Okay, so I'm sorry with the boring statistics, but that kind of irredentus, that kind of feeling about losing territory and getting it back, goes back a century, goes back to the colonial period, goes back to the agreement between France and the Cambodians. And remember, at the time, the Cambodian king actually asked the French to intervene to make Cambodia a protectorate in order to protect it from whom? The Thais, from the Siamese, as they were called at the time, who were seen as kind of upstarts by the Cambodians at the time. So the conflict goes back a very long time. Now, more immediately, we know how to solve this problem. We need an independent. It already exists, an ASEAN Independent Border Commission. It exists. It had a first meeting. The second meeting occurred some 15 years later. So there's no political will, but we know how to do it. It's under ASEAN auspices with independent observers, and we need to remap the border. But then there's another disagreement, because the Cambodians insist on using the Mercator scale for measuring borders, whereas the Thais insist on something called the Sinusoidal scale, which is more precise, which is more accurate. So we don't even agree on how the hell we're going to measure the border, okay? We could agree on that if there was a political will. And so there is not the political will. Why is there not the political will? Well, on the 12th of December, the Thais will probably, the Thai Prime Minister, who's is very fragile, will declare early elections. So it's in his interest there should be a kind of, as we say in Australia, a kind of khaki election, about defending the nation, the motherland, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the Cambodian Prime Minister, Hun Manet, son of Hun Sen, he has another political interest, which is to deflect all the growing concerns on the scam centers, on these, for instance, the Anak Internet, the scam centers in Cambodia, which have enriched him and his family and that of his party. The revenues from scam centers in Cambodia actually exceed that of the revenues from the textile industry, which is the most important industry in Cambodia.
And as far as these most recent clashes go, we know that Thailand obviously has a military advantage. And from the Thais in particular, we've heard on Monday quite a stern tone that they're not going to back down until territorial sovereignty is secured. What do you see as their strategy here, and how do you imagine Cambodia will react?
Well, Cambodia has no air force. Thailand does. So it's a very nasty situation for the Cambodians. But both at the same time have an interest for it to be solved, because their economies are being incredibly adversely affected. The revenues sent by Cambodians who work in Thailand, all those Cambodians now returned, that's billions of dollars. Okay, the Thais themselves lack. They have a population replacement rate at the moment, 1.3 million, 1.3%. So they need people. So they need those Cambodian workers. And tourists don't want to go to Thailand. Who will want to go to Thailand when there's a war going on? So it's a pretty stupid kind of war occurring at the moment, where both sides are going to lose out economically. But the passion of kind of nationalism, instrumentalized by self-serving politicians on both sides, is such that I don't see perhaps there will be some, less that sort of demonstrable kind of, sign from the Thai side that they're going to stop. Both sides at the moment have no interest in stopping this particular conflict.
Well, what then is the way forward? I mean, we know that we saw a ceasefire earlier this year in July, and then that signed with the Americans in the US in October. It kind of underlines how fragile any ceasefire could be. What needs to happen next for that not to happen again?
Well, what needs to happen is for ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, to put their damn money where their mouth is. They talk about the ability to solve state conflict in ASEAN, and they've been very successful, to be frank, in doing that for 50 or 60 years. So there must be an agreement with ASEAN to put in independent observers with technical assistance, perhaps from countries like France and other Western countries, to really map the border and then present a project. This is the border. Let's agree on it, and let's go on with life. Because these are recurring kind of incidents of border conflicts that have been going on for decades. And there's a way of putting an end to them. It's just simply a question of political will.
All right, David Camroux from Sciences Po University, thank you very much for your analysis. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for.